I mean, are you concerned that managers are bringing products to the market that have got liquidity kind of forced into them, that the true underlying assets are illiquid, but that to get something that's sort of investable, it's being bolted together with unnecessary liquidity?
Yeah. So there's an inherent implied conflict there, I guess, isn't there? That on the one hand, you're wanting to invest in these strategies because you're trying to capture an illiquidity premium, and on the other hand, to make them more accessible, the fund managers are designing structures to actually synthesize liquidity. So there has to be a compromise there to some extent. Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing at all, because if it can actually open up the market to a wider range of investors and the compromise is not too great, then I think it's a good thing. But I think it's a spectrum there. It's not black or white, and I think you've got to assess the strategies on their individual merits. So, we know, for example, without mentioning names, there's been a couple of very popular, long-standing private equity strategies available to retail investors, monthly or so liquidity. More recently, we've seen others come to market with similar structures in private equity. We've seen that same sort of approach, which uses internal investment structures that are in part long-term, closed-end, and in part more liquid investments to create that structure, becoming more popular across other asset classes. So, I had a conversation yesterday with someone who was coming out potentially with a private credit strategy with daily liquidity. So that's fine at first blush, but we want to really get an understanding of how they've gone about it, what are the compromises inherent in that structure, and whether, in trying to do that, they're just overturning the benefits that we actually see in trying to invest in illiquid assets in the first place. I don't know, your thoughts?
I think I agree, definitely, on the spectrum. And again, for us too, it's also education for our clients. So we're running a program now we run them every few years, but I think it's probably a little bit more important, especially around that whole property sector again, where clients can't get their monies out at the moment for a whole host of reasons. But so education is important, but we are seeing a bit of a spectrum. And again, I come back down to why are we wanting that particular asset, and how does that fit into the client portfolio? So if it does, as long as we understand some of those components, and if it does fit into what we're trying to achieve, then I would be happy to use it in that context. But yeah, it is. We'll look through sort of that whole gamut of things.
And I think that education piece is really important because, even retail clients, you could argue, they require seemingly more liquidity than they really actually need. So, a client that's invested for a long-term superannuation purpose, even once they move into retirement, the time frame of their investment should be still quite long-term. There is a role for illiquidity there, and educating them about the importance of illiquidity in the portfolio as a virtue rather than a detraction from the value of the portfolio or the value of the investment, I think is probably still work in progress.